I would like to call the March 5th, 2026 budget work session to order. I'd like to have Ms. Johnson call the roll.
Mr. Daniels.
Here.
Dr. Hubot.
Here.
Ms. Dobson. Here. Mr. Hill.
Here.
Mr. Holbrook.
Here.
Mr. Carnes.
Here.
Ms. Purvis. Here. Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. We're going to go to 1.03, which is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve today's agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Huba. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Purvis. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Agenda is approved. 2.01 for discussion, the fiscal year 26-27 budget. Mr. Dupere.
Thank you. Welcome to the Bedford County School Board Budget Work Session tonight, where the proposed initiatives are designed to address critical operational and educational needs for the 26-27 fiscal year. These key priorities focus on maintaining competitive staffing, fostering student development, and ensuring a safe learning environment. Tonight, I will lay the groundwork that we can collectively agree upon and prioritize as a sustainable school budget for FY 26-27 that considers the school division's mandatory requirements of have-tos and needs within the county's fiscal realities, ensuring student success while maintaining budgetary responsibility. Some of the initiatives discussed tonight will involve a 2-year plan to enable full funding and implementation. As I stated, key priorities driving these goals include have-tos and needs. Top have-tos or must-haves identified as addressing inflationary cost, factoring in rising insurance premiums, matching state salary increases including step raises, and preparing for reversion in FY 28. The top needs identified are increasing employee compensation over the state recommendation to ensure our salaries are competitive in the region, funding to maintain SROs on all campuses, initiate an elementary ISS program, and strategic considerations which include comparing and measuring efficiencies necessary to balance the budget without compromising core educational services. This proposed budget addresses these initiatives found within the goals of the Bedford County Public School Strategic Framework and that are vital to the success of our projected educational outcomes and academic growth of our student body. Strategic 1, high academic expectations. BCPS now ranks 31st out of 131 divisions in academic achievement based on test scores for FY 24 and 25. This notable improvement has seen BCPS climb from 105th in the state's academic ratings to 31st in 13 years, and this is a true testament to the dedication of our teachers and academic leaders. Moving forward, BCPS will continue to pursue its vision and mission statements for academic excellence, thus providing equal opportunities to enable all students to think creatively, collaborate, think critically, communicate, and become productive citizens, promoting success in Bedford County and beyond for years to come. It is imperative that if we are going to maintain this excellence, that the following initiatives must be implemented. Strategic goal number 2, safe and supportive learning environments. This includes 2 initiatives. Initiative 1 is BCPS and the Bedford County Sheriff's Office currently have SROs assigned across 19 campuses through a safety grant. With the recent expiration of grant funding, it is my intention to continue this vital and needed resource. The BCPS proposed budget for FY 26-27 will take on the full cost of 13 elementary SROs and 1 additional SRO at the Susie G. Gibson Science and Technology Center. Initiative 2 in this goal is funding for elementary in-school suspension support. Currently, only our secondary schools have a designated ISS. When elementary principals want to keep children in school, but these students need to be removed from class, administration and support staff are used to monitor and work with the student. This support will assist teachers and principals working on regulating behaviors for elementary students. The program will keep at-risk students in school to complete work, prevent total exclusion, and provide time to address underlying behavioral issues. While assistance is greatly needed with individual children, we try to address through intervention design specialists, or IDS. This program will support teachers who desire to teach and principals who need to focus on instruction and meeting building needs. And we will keep these students in school rather than sending them home. Even with the understanding of a tight budget for FY 26 and 27, it is imperative that we not delay on this program. We intend to initiate a pilot elementary ISS program next year with expectations of expanding to more elementary schools during the FY 27-28 year. Goal number 3, high quality workforce. It has 2 initiatives. Initiative number 1, in constant pursuit of higher quality workforce, this initiative addresses the current BCPS teacher's salary rank across Virginia at 111th out of 131 school divisions and 17 out of 20 school divisions in Region 5. Present compensation is well below the state average, and our teachers have patiently waited for this recognition. If we want to continue to attract the best teachers to BCPS, we need to be competitive with surrounding divisions. This proposal would put forth a state expected 3% pay increase for employees and with an appropriate step raise for the FY 26-27 school year, with full intention of addressing an accelerated model of compensation that would address moving all BCPS employees, regardless of their years of service, to an acceptable and appropriate pay scale on the state level. Our present career compensation data shows that long, dedicated service by our teachers is not appropriately rewarded, and this is a dilemma that must be resolved. Initiative 2, health insurance. This initiative will address an expected 30% increase in health insurance premiums for FY 26 and 27. This initiative makes the compensation initiative all that more important, as employees cannot just receive higher compensation to only cover their health insurance. The compensation health insurance increase must be dealt with together over the next 2 years to properly compensate our employees with their dedication to our division and our vision and mission statement. Strategic 5, efficient and effective use of resources. Bedford County Public Schools will allocate resources to programs and operations that efficiently and effectively educate our students. We will annually build our budget on support of the 5 goals of the BCPS strategic framework, and we will effectively address inflation and rising costs of health insurance, nutrition, and school resources on a year-to-year basis and on a multi-year basis as needed. And we must have collective discussions with all parties in preparation for Reversion FY 28 to prepare for the end of Reversion and the funding gap that as of today is proposed to be $2,900,000. Thank you for your cooperation and consideration for this budgetary incentives for FY 26 and 27. At this time, I would like to turn the specifics of this budget proposal over to our Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations, Mr. Randy Hagler, for summary. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. We'll be looking at the first page of the packet that was at your tables there, and that's the proposed summary of the changes from the FY 26 budget, which we're currently into the 27 budget. As Mr. DePere was saying, it's kind of just a few lines here, but there's a lot of lines that are affected. But in summarizing this, the big changes are salary changes for employees, the health insurance increase of 30%, covering that, covering the full cost of the SROs, and 2 positions for internal school suspension, ISS aides, to put 2 of those out there to help our elementary schools. The rest are just technical adjustments on this pages for federal, for staffing standards implementation, and other things that we've made technical adjustments for. As you can see, increase of almost $6 million to the operating fund. And for this budget to balance, it would be a request to the county of $1,837,555. I will note, if you look at the revenue side, where that request is, where it says under the revenues, of that 1.8 million, we're gonna reduce that by 600,000 and put it into maintenance reserve to prepare for reversion. So really, to accomplish everything we're talking about dealing with in the operating fund, it's, we're requesting really about 1.2 million to come into the operating fund to balance this budget. I will say that the salary increases in what's being presented for the state numbers here, let me just say, the House and Senate still working through, and they're gonna have to compromise. They're vastly different, so they're not like identical where I could really predict everything. But in order for us to move on in the budget process, I took a little bit from both, hopefully worst case scenario. But I did build in, the Senate had a 3% increase for employees, the House had 2%. I don't know what that's gonna be, we'll see what the compromise comes out. I built it based upon 3. The reason for that is if it comes out to 3, it's already built into the budget. If I built 2 and they went up to 3, I have to go find additional matching funds. So I wanted to build that in off the front end. So we'll see what comes out of the state in their final budgets. We could get some more money, could get some less, but I was trying to be conservative on that. This also includes, as Mr. Dupere was saying, it would be a 3% COLA salary increase across the board, and then employees would receive their experience step also. He did mention the very high increase in health insurance. We've had really 3 very difficult years. Just to give you an idea, back in beginning of 2024, we had $6 million in reserves in the bank account we are self-funded. As of the end of last month, we had $1 million. So you've seen a deterioration of our reserves. We need to build that back up. Though it is a large increase, I would say this. Out of the last 10 years, there were 5 years we didn't increase insurance at all. We were running real well. We didn't go up on insurance. The board didn't have to pay any more, nor were our employees. And if I take that 30% on top of everything that we've done over 10 years, it averages out to a 5 or 6% increase year over year, which is not horrible considering what most plans are running through in inflation in the health industry. So though the big hit's coming this year and we have to deal with it, it's not out of line to what everybody else has been experiencing over the last 10 years in that.
Hang on,
I have a
we
quick
have a
question.
question.
Yes, sir.
Also, can I interrupt you and ask questions?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
yes,
I wasn't
sorry.
sure.
I was gonna ask questions about the operating, but you can, yeah, go ahead.
So this, I just wanted to kind of focus on the request to the county.
Yes.
Of that 1.8 million and some change, when we say 1.8, really, we're immediately removing 600,000.
Yes, sir. So it's
To
really,
go-
well, 600 is gonna go to our maintenance reserve. It's still 1.8, but only really 1.2 is gonna go into our operating
Okay.
to accomplish all what I'm talking about now. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to make sure that was,
Yep.
that was what I was understanding.
Yes, sir. Yeah, you can interrupt and ask me questions as I'm going along, that's fine.
Sorry.
This is a budget work session.
Thanks.
We did look at, when we have such a large insurance increase, you wanna look at how are employees affected. So I took our lowest scale, applied a step plus a 3% and said, how would they come out monthly? So for our full-time employee on one of the lowest scales, employee only on the plan, that would go up $20 a month on the insurance. And their salary on 3% would go up close to 108. If it comes out at 2% increase that we have to go to ultimately with the state, $84 increase a month monthly in pay, $20 increase to insurance. So they're not going backwards. But large part has to go for insurance, but it's not like they're gonna get $20 and it's all taken away. So I wanted to make sure the board kind of understood the metrics, and that's at the lower end of the pay scale for a full-time employee. I will make the caveat with that, if you're not a full-time employee, and if you have employee plus, no guarantees there. I couldn't run metrics for everybody's salary at part-time and employee plus. There's no guarantees, but usually the board wants to make sure for a full-time employee only, that's taken care of and everything builds off of that. So I'll pause there for question, it gets complicated. Yes, sir.
That 30%, is that our increase to the employee or is that employee contribution? What's the breakdown?
Yeah, it's a
on that?
30% increase overall to the whole premium, and typically we split 80-20 with the employee. though, with our new consultants, they ran it through their modeling on what is the common practice out there in industry and everybody else as far as splits with employees plus and stuff. So actually, it's the employee only didn't receive as much of an increase. Some of the employees plus had a little bit more. So typically, there's a split between when rates go up. We usually do about an 80-20 split between employees taking care of 20% of the increase, the board taking care of 80. That's just a starting point. It doesn't have to be that way, but our consultants ran it in their modeling and came back with a little bit of tweaks to that. So a little bit lower for the employee only, a little bit higher for employee plus on some of them. But we wanted to make sure we ran those numbers so people, the board members are saying, is somebody on the lower end of the scale going to go backwards? They're not, either with 2 or 3%. Okay. This plan also fully funds the additional SROs that we have in place. So receive cost estimates from the county on what that would cost. So that's built in. I will say that the sheriff has applied for a grant. We won't know the result of that until May. So if we need to do it now. If that grant comes through, it would free up probably the money that we would have given for SROs, maybe for some other security things, equipment. Because that would not have to be spent next year, but we won't know that until late May or maybe even June. So we'll know that late after the budget cycle on this. So we've built the full cost in for next year. There are 2 added positions for in-school suspension aides at elementary schools to help with the schools regulating that. And then everything else in there is technical adjustments. And I believe Mr. Hill, you asked a question I was going to conclude with, that it's really 1.2 million after the 600. And I'll stop because I kind of went through this and answer any questions. That's the operating fund. I'll go down to the other funds here in a minute to see if any of the board members have questions about any of these line items or any of the things that I've mentioned tonight.
Any questions?
I have a question about the ISS positions.
Yes.
Obviously, it's more of a probably.
I'll defer to Dr. Woodford on that. So
Than you on that one. So I guess I just want to kind of, what is that? Why is it important? Why 80,000? Those sort of
Sure.
things.
So in our secondary schools, you're probably very familiar with in-school suspension. A student does something and part of their discipline is to spend a day doing their work in school suspension. So elementary schools don't have that, but we're seeing more of students who are misbehaving and the principals are giving them a day of in-school suspension and they're keeping them in their offices, or the counselor's keeping them, where the teacher really just needs to send that message to the student that your behavior is not acceptable. And we're not talking a first time, we're talking maybe this is happening on a regular basis. And so we don't want to suspend that child and send them home. We want them to be in school. We want them to be doing their work. So this would be a place that we would put those students that's not in the main office, not where they can see everything going on, but they have someone in there who can help them do their work. And it's not taking staff or the guidance counselor or the principal away from doing the work of the school. We do have IDS services, and that's our higher level of services for kids who are really dysregulated and they have significant behavior problems that are influencing other kids in the classroom. They're the ones who are refusing, laying on the floor. That we give them much more intense services. This is simply for a student who is misbehaving on a regular basis. It's not so much a mental health issue, it is just a behavior issue. And we just have not given those supports to our elementary schools before. We've been able to manage it. But we are seeing more behavior in our elementary schools. So we'd like to start with just possibly our larger elementary schools that have a higher level of behavior. It's very entertaining for students to be in the office during the day and doing their work. So we want to make it so it's not as pleasant. So they're not being entertained. They actually are learning that you can do your work in the classroom with your friends, or you can do this work in the room with someone making sure you're working all day. So that's the difference.
Do you have any statistics, numbers, like how many kids does that mean in the larger elementary schools in a given week?
In some of our larger elementary schools, I would probably say every day there's probably a student who is removed from the class for maybe 2 to 3 hours, who are being watched by different people in the school, which is much larger than it used to be. I can go into the two that I'm thinking about right now are 2 larger elementary schools, and I can bet that there'll be someone in one of the main office areas doing work that has been removed from the classroom. So I would say, if not for a few hours every day, at least 2 to 3 times a week. When they're not, if we do have, just like in our middle and high schools, if we have a day that we don't have students in ISS, then that person would be out supporting students in the classroom and, helping out with remediation or whatever we need, probably substituting if we have teachers out and things like that.
So is that a full-time position?
It is a full-time position. It's at a paraprofessional salary, just like at the middle and high schools, we have a paraprofessional.
So when you say 2, we're two different.
2 different elementary schools.
And they would not go to another school, they would just stay in those schools.
What about these schools that are more spatially challenged or that are at or over capacity? How would that work in those type of situations?
I think that probably, I'm trying to think specifically
Are you
of-
trying to associate overcrowding with behavior?
No, what I'm asking is,
Where
we've got a room for them. Me and Jill just went through.
Oh, I get you.
or
I get
Jill
you.
and I just went through Forest Elementary School. I don't know that there's room there. I mean, we've got, every storage closet, the stage is full. How would that, in that particular school, I use that as an example because I just went to it. Where would you put
Right.
this?
So I would say that probably, just like, so instead of putting the student possibly with the counselor, we might use the counselor's office or some of that itinerant staff that's not there all the time. So we have a space like for ESL or speech, or that the principal would just have to get creative, and probably that student would work in a space. The big piece is that they have somebody to monitor them so that the teachers and the principals can continue on with their work. And that may be in a corner in the cafeteria for a little while, or, in an office in the gym or something like that. So I think it would be easier to find a place. It probably won't be a place that person has a space all the time. Luckily, some of our more challenging schools don't have as high a discipline right now. So just like with our kids who are getting IDS services, we might even just send them into the classroom to help regulate that student and work with them in the back. So it really depends on the situation. I think our idea is that we just need somewhere for our kids to work quietly without pulling our principals and teachers away from working with the other students. And so,
And just kind of piggyback off what you just said on the schools where, so if we provide these positions for all the elementary schools, on the schools where there's not as much behavioral issues, what would this staff member be doing in the meantime?
So honestly, what we talked about to keep the cost down is that our smaller schools who don't have a lot of discipline, believe it or not, we have 1 or 2 schools who haven't had a discipline referral all year. So we probably wouldn't initially put anybody there. But if we did, we would probably share those resources. So one person may be at a school with discipline that's not heavy, maybe 3 days a week, and at a smaller school for 2 days a week. So that principal might have to say, I can't give you in-school suspension today, but I can give it to you tomorrow. And so maybe sharing some of those resources. But I will say that I don't think there's probably an elementary school who wouldn't love to have an extra person. We always need people covering classes or substitutes, especially at different times of the year. And there are always kids to work with. And so we would just kind of have a schedule where they could go out and help and support the teachers and the kids and, yeah. And that's what we do at the middle school and high school. If we have days, then that person just we assign them to support somewhere else.
I would say this is for 2 positions this year.
Yeah.
It probably would grow, so we can provide services for other schools where we see this happening, but with the challenging and some of the things we're dealing with in the budget, we thought it would appropriate just to ask for 2 this year instead of 14.
And be sure that it's effective and be sure
Yeah.
that it's, we won't wanna waste money at all and, we do know there are some schools that need a lot of help.
This has been a discussion across the state. How do you bring these kids out of a classroom where they're disruptive to the other learners? How do you get them assistance? How do you keep them in school? I've been at a conference and this is one of the topics that we spent about a half hour on one afternoon, and no one has a solution. They all know what the root causes, or they think they know what the root causes are, but these children are kind of gaining on us, and we kind of knew this was going to be an issue a couple of years ago, and we're now seeing it come to fruition with some of our kids who were not regulated properly at home maybe. And so I spoke yesterday at the Smith Mountain Lake Chamber of Commerce, Regional Chamber of Commerce, and the superintendent in front of me was speaking on this topic. I didn't intend to speak on this, but he was literally, when I walked in, speaking on this. And everybody's trying to come up with a solution because it's growing across most divisions, all divisions, but most schools. So it's a way of taking the child out of a situation where the others are not held back. Can be very disruptive.
And I would like to say, ISS is a after the fact kind of solution. What I want you to know is that we are working on a before all of that happens solution, because we know what we've got to do. Our preschool, I was just talking to Dr. Trosper today, they are bringing back like Parenting University, where they're going to do parenting classes for our preschool parents, and we're going to talk to them about screen time and, being outside and let's be healthy. And so trying to bring some awareness to our parents with young children. And then really working on our programs and helping our teachers with, different ways of classroom management. So we're not just working on what do we do with them after they misbehave. We're really trying to get, how do we change the culture and how do we change what our kids are coming with, and how do we get our parents on board with helping with that? So there's a lot we're doing on the other side too.
Dr. Woodward,
Yes.
if you foresee this, let's say this gets passed and 2 years down the road, the discipline drops dramatically, or you see this position evolving in some way, shape, or form, would it be similar to like us reducing the testing coordinators in school and basically evolving that to fill in other gaps? Is that kind of how you
I
foresee
would
it?
love to not even have to have ISS at the elementary level. Yes, I would love. I really think one of the things that we have seen is our IDS program, which it's more of a mental health professionals, and they're specifically trained with working with young children to change behavior over time. With those positions, principals actually reach out and they let us know, like, this is the behavior we're struggling with. We send someone in to kind of observe. And then that person goes in and works with that child and that teacher for 6 to 8 weeks. We are seeing that to be the most effective, getting those students in their environment, working intensely with them. We just don't have enough, and that's a big cost. So this is kind of our way of, we'll bring these 2 ISS people to our trainings, hoping they will get some experience with that so that we can give more individualized. But yes, if behavior went down and we didn't need it, we would be happy to let that go, for sure.
Anybody else? Mr. Heather, real quick, you're gonna go through all these sheets,
Yes, I am.
right? Okay.
Yeah.
Before we move on, that, going back to the insurance,
Yes.
the number you gave out for kind of an example of our lowest scale
Yep.
was 108 to $20.
If,
If we get the 3% raise,
yeah, if I went to our lowest scale, full-time employee, and I look at, if you apply the step and a 3% increase, their monthly take-home would go up 108,
Yep.
and the insurance goes up $20.
is that $20? I know the 108 is depends on where they're at in their steps. That 108 can change depending on.
That's at the lowest, it'll be different, it's
Yeah, and
different.
so at the highest, obviously, it would be more than that.
Yep.
Does that correspond with the $20, or is
No,
that
it's
$20
$20 employee only,
is
yeah.
static?
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, for our lowest wage earners, you know, that's 18.5%. That's a pretty good chunk.
Yep.
Is there any way that we can, and I don't know the legalities of this either, is there any way we can do a sliding scale to where our higher wage earners would not necessarily pay more percentage wise, but would pay more dollar wise, and the percentages would even out a little bit more to make it more equitable for our lower wage earners?
Nothing's impossible. We did ask our consultants that, and they don't know of anybody doing something like that. I mean, they have a big book of business. What you get into there is, you know, the payroll system behind the scenes, having multiple different setups and who's where, and where do you put the cutoffs? It's, you know, a sliding scale, so is it somebody making, you know, so if somebody goes from 25 to 26, is that the break? Is it 30, is it 35? And so you gotta figure out where that break is and apply it. The way we've done it, we've asked our consultants if they have, you know, examples of that and stuff, and they just didn't have any examples of other books of business doing that. You know, it's the same rate, so.
So the
Is it impossible? No. I mean, anything's possible you can do. I don't think there's any legality of not, you know, you can do that, as far as I know. It's setting it up and managing that. And then, you know, your rate sheet, which I'll show you, it gets very large to manage. But, you know, once it's set up in the payroll, we can do it, but it gets a little bit harder.
So in your example, that $20, is that the 20% that the employee is responsible for, and it's really $100 increase?
So,
Picking up the 80?
correct. So,
So it's an 80-20 split.
yeah, so there, you know, so the school board's picking up a big part of that. The employee's picking up $20 of the increase, yes.
Right now, is it an across the board, every employee, whether you're at the low scale or the high scale, you're getting a $100 increase?
The same premium applies to everyone.
Okay.
Yep. Did that answer your question?
Yes. But they all get the same benefit too.
Yes. Yeah, it's the same plan. Same rates for everybody. There is decrease in board contribution if you are part-time employees. So if you go from 100 to 80%, because realistically at 80 or 60 or 50%, the board doesn't even have to offer insurance accorded with the Affordable Care Act. You do, but the employees have to pay more for that. The board doesn't contribute. We base it all on whether you're working 30 hours a week or more, and that's 100% contribution. Those are 100% full-time employees. So, Mr. Hill, that can be looked at, but I mean, we did investigate and asked our consultants if they had any modeling or any plans like that, and they had nothing in their book of business that they could recommend to us, like tiers or anything like that. They just, not their experience.
So doing a flat percentage would be difficult to manage.
If you think about a payroll system, you've got all these plans, whether you're part of the wellness plan or not, are you 80-20, and we got all these rates set up. So if you go to a percentage base, it's like, you gotta set up every single combination. I'm just thinking out loud, it's like, that would be behind the scenes, I would have 20,000 different insurance deductions.
Yeah.
Instead of 80. It just multiplies in trying to do that.
Maybe another person.
I'd have to investigate whether there's a different way to do it in the payroll system. I just know how we're working right now and how it's set up with the deductions. You set up a deduction, it's applied to everybody like this. So, if the board wants me to do more research on that, I will. Bring back something, but we did do some research on it. I think the finance committee from a year or two ago asked us to look into that. We reported back on that, so we did do our due diligence on that. Oh, in effect, you know, I understand what you're saying, you know, with the percentage and stuff. typically, we don't have a 30% increase. You know, usually it's a lot lower than that, and like I said, 5 of the last 10 years, we had no increase at all. So, it's just a 30%, it's a big pill to swallow in 1 year. I agree.
And obviously, I know we've not had these increases in the past. Looking at the landscape, I don't believe we'll probably ever go back to the place of not having increases year over year. How do we?
Well, when we didn't do an increase, we were, you know, our reserves were about 6 million. My run out claims, if I went back to fully insured, I estimated about 2 million, so we had a good healthy balance. So if you began the year with 6 million, ended with 6.4, it's hard to go to the board and employees and say, now pay more. I mean, your balance went up. And so we were just running real well. There's been an inflation, this is typically with a self-insured plan, they say about every 7 or 8 years you have a bad year. You just see a lot flow out. This is 3 years in a row. This is not just bad years, this is inflationary. And it is, you know, there's a lot of other districts and other people are saying they're getting 18 to 25% increases this year. So it's not, now some aren't, but there's a lot just bearing that brunt right now. I don't see us not going up in the future, just so we never have another 30. If I could go back and give a 4 or 5 in those good years, it wouldn't be a 30 now. So that's just learning how to manage and do things going forward. So.
And you're saying, and I forgive me, I don't understand this. We don't have Anthem or something. We are self-insured. So
We're
people-
self-insured. Anthem manages it. They manage all the claims, the back end.
Okay.
And so they send me a bill every week and I pay the claims as they come in.
We do have Anthem then?
Anthem is our provider and that's the network and they do the administrative side because they have, you know, the computer systems and back end systems. But the actual claims that are submitted, they send a bill to me once a week and I pay that. We wire transfer the money. So we're paying the claims as they go. So I know a lot of people will say, well, what if you go out and get a broker, you do this or you do something different? The claims are the claims. We're running at 123% of budget right now. So what I'm bringing in right now, we're spending 123%. It's not enough to cover. It's eroded the reserves and we got to build that back up. So if I were to go out fully insured or go to something else, the claims are still that high. And that's how I'd be quoted on, and what we're actually running. Overall, though, our high deductible plan, I think is a very attractive plan. When we compare ourselves to other districts and even, you know, when you go around, we're gonna go up to about, I think the 20X or to it, 74 or something like that. For a high deductible, which is around $3,400 deductible, 100% paid once you hit deductible. It is a nice plan. Can we keep that long-term? We'll see. You know, we looked at different alternatives to changing that plan up, but if we change the plan up, you're basically putting it on the employees anyway. You're saying you're gonna have to bear more of this brunt on a deductible or something. So we're always looking at that, seeing what's happening in industry and recommending different things and trying to stay with the times and be as competitive as possible. But we had some good years. 3 or 4 or 5 years there where I didn't go up at all, and this one came. So actually, last 3 years have been bad, and we went up 7, then we went up 10. Now we're on 30.
It's a big cumulative jump.
Yes. So a lot of this budget has to take care of that. You have to bring in, you got to cover those claims, because if I go down to 0, I have no more money to pay the Anthem bill when it comes in. We need to have those funds set aside.
But we were able to maintain, once you hit your deductible, it's still completely covered, which
Yeah,
is a big deal. Most people don't have that.
We did not make any changes to the plan.
Yeah.
Can't guarantee that'll be indefinitely in the future, because we did institute the high deductible plan 14 years ago. It was a PPO plan. We went to the high deductible and that became our standard plan going forward, not a PPO. Just the increased costs and stuff. So that became what the board basically is funding. If you want the PPO, you gotta pay a lot more. Where the PPO used to be the standard, it switched. That might happen in the future. We'll have to work through that. Did that help answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Anybody else with any questions of what we've heard so far?
I'll move down to the other funds. I know the operating is the big one. It's most of where all of our employees are, but I'd like to touch, and that's on the same page, and just stay on that same page. The textbook fund, we're looking at reduction in state funding, enrollment going down a little bit less in state funding. However, even with that reduction, we're currently putting $300,000 of local money into the textbook fund. And looking out 4 or 5 years, we have the funds to do adoptions in the future. So no recommendation to change the $300,000 of local funding going in there. That can stay the same even with the slight reduction in state funding. The maintenance reserve fund, the $600,000 mentioned above, the county takes $500,000 off their initial revenue and they put it into there also. So you're gonna see a $1.1 million increase into the maintenance reserve fund. Those funds will be spent on maintenance items. That's cash that can be spent on that. But long-term, I'll get to it later in the meeting. Those funds are theoretically gonna go back into the operating once reversion ends, to make up the huge gap that we're gonna experience there. Later also, in my presentation, I have a 5-year CIP, capital improvement plan that the facility committee has reviewed. And I'm gonna be presenting that to the full board from the committee and just looking 5 years out of what projects we're looking at. So that'll be later in this meeting. The nutrition fund, we're gonna try to reduce some additional positions. Still challenges with the nutrition fund. Overall in that budget, I will say, we put together an accurate expenditure budget for the nutrition fund. But what we've experienced the last year, we're hoping for better this year, but I still see an erosion there. The revenues are not gonna be enough to cover the expenditures. We'll continue to spend down the reserves in that fund. Long term, if that continues and we continue to try to do reductions, I don't know if we're gonna cut our way to balancing that. We may have to divert money from the operating fund to the nutrition fund. We don't have to do it next year, maybe not the next year, but we're trying to address this as much as possible. Last year, we reduced 9 positions, 8 or 9 positions. We're recommending reducing another 6 this year. Most of our elementary schools will only have 2 nutrition workers working there. So that's gonna be, if one's out sick, we gotta scramble. So we're trying to do the best we can to cut expenditures and do the best we can. It may mean that there might not be as many options. You know, if you're used to 4 options, it might be 1 option, 2 options. With less staffing, you just can't do as much. So we're gonna have to address that, working with Suzanne Quisenberry, our supervisor. But I would say the nutrition fund, I don't believe it'll work out next year. We're gonna have to dig into reserves to break even.
On that nutrition fund,
Yes.
I know members of the finance committee understand this, but just so the public knows, I mentioned this at a meeting last week. 2/3 of the county get free lunch,
Yes.
correct? The reimbursement rate is different, I guess, depending on the student. But those reimbursement rates, a lot of times do not cover the costs, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
So we put it into a modeling system, so it's referred to as CEP school. When an entire school gets a free lunch, that means every kid comes through gets a free lunch. When you put in your reimbursement rate from what you have to model, like what am I collecting right now by free and reduced kids getting it for free, they put the application in, but I'm charging some kids. So if I go to the entire school being free and I'm not collecting anymore, will I break even or do better? So the ones we haven't done, we're not gonna break, we're gonna do worse because the reimbursement rate is not big enough. So the other schools, we've put it into that modeling and said, if we go forward with CEP, the entire school, because of everybody going through, you get more money in to pay for that staff and what you're doing, and it makes sense, and you get above that break even, or you think you're gonna do better than if you didn't go CEP. So that's why in certain schools you don't have that, in certain schools you do.
So those are federal funds, correct?
These are federal funds, yes, sir.
And who mandates that they're getting free lunch? The state or
It's
the
part of
federal?
the free and reduced lunch, federal program. So the rules involved in that, as Mr. Daniels knows, and talking to Suzanne Quisenberry when we've had finance meetings, very complicated on what you can and cannot do, what you charge, what you can serve, what you have to do. It's a complicated program to run, but
I don't think complicated.
the modeling, whether you go to CEP, Suzanne will look at that and look at what level they are. And we'll put that in the modeling to see if we should switch them over to CEP or not.
Mr. Hackler, I
Yes.
apologize.
No worries.
I'm not great with acronyms. What is CEP?
CEP is just whether the whole school qualifies for free reduced lunch. Actually, any school can qualify, and you could say, I'm gonna move the schools to the entire school or free and reduced lunch. It's just, what is your reimbursement gonna rate? It's a designation for a school that we're gonna move it to where all the kids are free and reduced. You don't have to put an application in. Everybody's free. But if we
So
were to do
is
that,
it- is
if
it-
you were to do that district-wide, we'd have even a bigger shortfall than we have right now.
Cause you gotta staff it.
Huh?
You'll have to staff it.
Not staff that, your
Well, at some
reimbursement
point
rate
you
from the
will.
federal government would not make up for what kids are paying going through the line right now. So you would face a bigger
On
deficit.
top of that, if you're doing 100 lunches and now all of a sudden you're doing 300 or something like that, I'm just making the numbers up. You obviously
A lot
need
kid-
another
a lot of
staff
kids,
person.
a lot more kids might go through, but that's with the modeling. Not everybody's gonna go through, so you have to assume how many will go through now that it's entirely free. Not everybody will, some will still pack in. So that's what the modeling is doing, is saying our best guess based upon previous things that have happened. If you go free for a whole school, I expect these kids that weren't buying to still go through, increases your revenue, but not to the point where it would offset.
Yeah, I get it.
It's not a perfect science, but we use our best modeling that we can based upon previous practices. It's a federal designation that says a CV school is entirely free. That's what it is. Whereas if you're not, you have to put in an application and then you can get a free or reduced lunch if you qualify. So kids in these other schools can still get a free and reduced lunch, but they have to do an application.
Is the primary reason that we are doing that is because we are concerned about food security in some of these schools?
We're trying to balance the budget and do that. In the schools that we have done it, we looked at the modeling and said we would at least break even or do better by moving the whole school to CEP. So it's just easier to manage, because if you don't have that, you have to process every application. Everybody has to apply and you have to process the application. And then you have to put it in the system. Whereas kids coming through on the CEP, they just go through the line, free or reduced lunch. And you just count your numbers. When it's not that way, you have to process the application, put it in the system, and then they come in and they actually audit that to see if what the parent put in is actually true. And I will say, there have been audits where they've picked 4 and all 4 really didn't qualify after the audit, and we had to switch them back and say, no, you don't qualify anymore because the information was not accurate.
Nice way of putting it.
I'm concerned about their health, the food quality, and we had talked about removing a lot of the food dyes as well as the styrofoam. Is that,
Those mandates are coming down where we're having to move, so any kind of regulation that comes down from the federal or state level, we have to move with that. So if those are, but when they come down with that, the manufacturers have to shift and make sure they get that out of there, because we don't manufacture the food.
so is that gonna affect the price? Is that,
The prices, here's my opinion, the state and the federal government really doesn't know what it costs to run the nutrition program for our schools. And so it puts a burden on us, because I don't think we get the reimbursement rates we need to really run what's happening. Inflation has been true. I mean, we've gone up on minimum wage, the food prices have gone up, but the reimbursement rates have not kept pace. So that's putting a more burden on the locality. So.
And Mr. Carnes, I don't have the exact stats in front of me, but I know that we've talked about this in meetings in the past. When you talk about food insecurity, we have many of our students that if they don't eat with us, they don't eat.
Right.
So I don't know what that number is. Mr. Hager, I thought we've had that in the past, but it's substantial, but it's very surprising.
And I would say, anybody can put an application in to apply for free reduced lunch. Just because if you're not at a CEP school, you can still get a free lunch. You just gotta put the application in. So it's not like we won't do it. We will, you just have to go and do the application, and you could qualify for a free reduced lunch. Does that help? Yep.
No, it's
No,
clear
okay.
as mud, but that's fine. I am concerned about 2 staff members per elementary school in a environment where, I don't know about you guys, but my kids were walking petri dishes of disease when they were young. And I am concerned about that. I don't see how that's sustainable in the environment that is.
Well, we look at how many kids are coming through the line.
Okay.
And so how many kids are the traffic? So at some of your non-CEP schools, there's not high participation. They probably can do it with 2. We do have Each zone has a full-time sub that we can go to a different area and jump in and help if somebody's out and take care of that. Because when you go down to limited staff, you have to have backup somewhere. And so we've built that in. And so we will monitor, we're looking at how many, and it's not every elementary is going down to 2, but some of you very smalls that do not have high participation might go down to 2, but that's not everywhere. And we'll monitor that, and if we can't do it, if it's breaking, we're gonna have to put more staff in, but then that creates a bigger deficit. So some of these are things that we've gone down on and we think we can go a little bit more, but we will not jeopardize the food quality or safety of the food. I will say, you know, all 4 of my kids worked in the cafeteria and they've been in restaurants working. Our cafeterias are the cleanest places they've ever seen. Because they're trained and they know how to keep it clean and know how to serve and take temperatures and do all that. Not all the restaurants do as well as that, but, and that's just coming from my kids. All 4 of them have worked in that system and then gone out in the restaurants and they said, we do a good job of making sure it's clean and taking care of in the food quality. So.
I'm old, but when I was in elementary school, I remember working in the cafeteria, you know, when I was in 5th grade and helping out.
Mhm.
And do we have any of the kids coming in and
No.
helping at all?
We can't do that. You know, you're back there with equipment and things like that, you know, liability there, so, yeah.
Well, I was more just collecting
Yeah,
food afterwards or cleaning up. They don't do any of that?
I don't know if some kids will go around and do anything like that, but usually our cafeteria staff and custodians are taking care of cleaning up and taking care of things in the cafeteria. They usually go back to class. The cafeteria staff is preparing the food and running the line and also the cash register.
I don't know about y'all, but that seems like a really good position for an ISS coordinator. You need to clean up all the food. I'm just saying.
Well, what's even more concerning is that 6 positions only add up to $96,000.
They're not full-time. So the positions that are on there, they're working usually 4 hours a day. So it's not a full-time. So what you'd be left in is probably with a manager and closer to a full-time employee there. It would be that additional, you know, staff coming in. This is not all at elementary. Some of this is at the high school where we think we're overstaffed, and we've got adjustments in other areas too. So I don't wanna say all that is at the elementary level, it's not.
Gotcha, okay.
We look at the metrics of how many meals served per employee and compare them across the division. And so if there are some schools doing it with this many employees and serving this many meals, and it's out of whack with someone else, we adjust down and we're leveling it out, and we have metrics to look at what's ideal there. So we're watching all of that. Okay, nutrition. If you go to the second page, the second and third pages are really the summary pages of what's behind the budget. Once the meeting's over, everything will be posted on our website, online, on our budget. And so all 5,000 lines of budget code will be there. This is a summary of all that. So when we come back next week, if the board makes any changes to the budget, I will change it in here. If there are no changes, this is what you would be voting on next week, are the numbers in here, and I'll guide you through that. But you actually list these numbers, and this is what you're approving for the following week. But this is a summary of all those like 5,000 line items in our budget. I will mention at this time, I don't know if I mentioned it already. Did I mention a caboose bill for this year? There is, we're talking about the budget for next year, but there were amendments to the current year budget. Usually those are minor. The Senate and House both had a bonus in those budgets. I'm not ready to present on that tonight. Emily, who's next to me, will be presenting our third quarter forecast at the April meeting. What is our balance in there? And then we'll make a recommendation to the board on what we can do with the bonus in this year's budget. So more to speak on that. Have to wait for that to get passed and see the language in it. But we'll speak to that at our April meeting, and our recommendation on that is just so employees have heard about it. It's been in the newspapers. Waiting for that to finally pass and see the language on what we can do, and we'll have a recommendation on that in April for this year. Okay. If you go to the next page, Page 4, this is where I do a reversion calculation. I type numbers in from the current state budget, do a what if analysis. And so this is also showing how money's flowing and what's happening. And really, the LCI, Local Composite Index, that I did a big presentation on this several weeks ago, has been the big driving factor here. Since we started the reversion back in 2014, there's been almost an added $4 million to that gap just because of our local composite index going up. That's why we started pumping $600,000 into that and decreasing our operating fund to lessen that gap. It just has continued to expand. And so my projection now, so this is based upon the governor's initially proposed budget, because I don't have worksheets for the others, that I typed everything in, and I predict that at the end of reversion, the money that would flow away from us, from the state, is $11.7 million. That's down below at the bottom. Our current plan for set aside, which is that 1.1 million, 500 from the county, 600 from us, we would get up to 8.7, so a $2.9 million gap. I will say, that's based upon projected budget for next year. There will be the 27-28 budget, which I imagine that gap will get bigger. And then in 28-29, several things are gonna happen. The state will re-benchmark off these last 2 years, so that means more money come from the state in the calculation. And also there will be a new LCI composite index coming out. That could go up or down for us. So I expect that 2.9 to increase. I don't know how high, at least 3.5. I would guess, that's just me just guessing right now, because of the money the state's given us in the budget for raises and other things will get refactored into their SOQ. So just painting the picture of what's coming down the road, and that's with us putting that additional 600 in there. That as of today, I predict 2.9, but I expect it to increase. Just keeping the board.
The LCI hasn't gone down at all in the last 10 years.
Um,
There's been a few stagnant.
Yeah, the 26,
down.
27, 27, 28, it stayed exactly the same. Statistically, I don't know how that's possible, but it did. But we've been increasing since 2014, it's been going up. So the last biennium, it stayed the same, but I don't know if it'll hold there or not for Bedford County or not. So that's an update on, the reversion funding, and that's coming in 28, 29. So a lot of things can happen between now and then. What is the state budget then? What is locality funding? How are we gonna deal with that? But that's gonna have to be dealt with coming up in 28, 29.
Yeah, it's gotta get dealt with soon, because we can't operate on assumptions of what we think they may or may not do. Let's pause here. Does anyone have any questions on this wonderfully positive development?
I don't remember the exact number from last year, and I don't know if you have that number. Do you remember your projected difference for the fiscal year 28-29?
Yeah, I was at 1.5.
Okay, I thought it was 1.7.
Yeah, it went up another 1.5, and I'll say the big part of that, because our LCI didn't change, the biggest part of that is in the last two budgets, the state was given 5% increases in each year, so that's a 10% increase to staff. That all got re-benchmarked and factored into, and the state budget just went way up.
Yeah.
And so when you apply that LCI for that difference, that's what caused it.
So if you follow it to its conclusion, really that 2.9 that you're projecting right now, if everything remains the same and we continue on that path, we're really looking closer to $5-6 million once we actually hit.
There's 2 more years. If they do a 2% or 3%, it's gonna go up could go up another million. Once that gets refactored and re-benchmarked in, where I can do the calculations. That's my best guess.
So, and I know obviously you are beholden to today's metrics.
I can only use their calc tools to predict what I have right now. Some of those things were like, they put money in, but it doesn't get re-benchmarked till later. There's no way for me to do a calculation off that, so I have to wait for some of those metrics to come out. But I think easily that could go up another million. Yes, sir.
So, I mean, we're looking at
4 million.
4 million, maybe more, depending
Maybe more.
on, yeah, okay. So
The other things that happen on that is the LCI could impact that, but also your student enrollment.
So I'm guessing, and kind of the point I'm trying to make with that is more to you all and to the public listening is we are gonna have, not only are we gonna have a budget deficit coming, we're gonna have to figure out how to start really cutting over the next little bit. Because what's gonna happen is not only is our deficit gonna be at $5 million, our maintenance reserve is at $0. And I know I don't wanna steal your thunder later on, but it's not great. What we need to do with maintenance either.
Well, I've got another sheet here to talk about that, and I'll speak to that too. Yes, this is assuming, this deficit is assuming that everything that would have been set aside for maintenance reserve would move over to the operating fund. Don't
And we're
know,
already gonna be $5 million short on the $4 million short on the operating fund.
and if
plus
you
not
move
having
all the
any
money over, you would have zero in your maintenance reserve going forward, yes. And
Well,
I don't,
zero-
I
that's
would not,
zero.
and I would not recommend that. I don't think you can rebuild it overnight, but we're gonna have to address that too, yes, sir.
We've talked previously about trying to put a couple of quarter percentage points and different things to try to bolster that, and it's like, we just don't have it. And our maintenance reserve will be zero, but quite honestly, we're still gonna have maintenance that's still gonna need to be done, so we're below zero.
We've caught up on a lot.
Get an HVAC unit go down.
Yeah. We've caught up on a lot. I think I will recommend when we get to that point that you have to put money in there for reserve because you have to have some contingency there. But we've done a lot over the last few years. So I think it's not ideal, but I think over time you need to rebuild that fund up. And I'll give estimates when I get to that sheet here in a minute. I briefed the facility committee on that. And I think also the county was working on their CIP and I briefed their administrative staff over there what I think that fund needs to get to long term. But that's our last page. I'll wait to get to there.
So if we don't see a great increase in funding, we're gonna have to potentially have a great
Yes.
decrease in spending.
Yes, sir. It's gotta bounce.
Yep.
So, yeah.
We can't run like the federal
And
government.
state budgets are uncertain. I will say, state budget, I would say the state budgets are uncertain on how much funding they're gonna have. Sometimes they give me money that's one time. That doesn't help my reoccurring.
That's right.
I'll take it, but it doesn't help the reoccurring. The state, I believe, had a lot of money to work with this year, but Medicare
Mhm.
took about 2 billion of it. So not as much came to K-12 education that could have. If they took care of that this year, and if they have increasing revenues in the future, hopefully some more money will start flowing to K-12. So this is worst case, but there may be more state funding that comes our way to help us. I just can't promise that right now.
But you also don't know if our LCI is gonna increase either.
I do not.
You don't know,
No.
once what is it, 28 is when they redo the LCI again, or do they do it every year?
I will say they do it every 2 years. However, there was a bill, I don't know if it passed yet. There was a bill for the General Assembly to give 1.5 million to JLARC, who's their study arm, to redo the entire calculation on how they fund schools. Now, you could say, yay. I'm a bit scared on that. Because if the pie stays the same amount, it's just how you cut it up. And I know in Northern Virginia, a lot of the money from Northern Virginia is coming down this way because their LCI is so high and they don't like that. I'm worried we lose.
Yeah.
But I can't guarantee that. It depends on what the General Assembly does. But you don't know if you win or lose. So if they redo the whole metric and calculations, reversion's over and we're in a whole new day and I'll have to figure out how to do this going forward. And I will, but that's a big unknown.
I mean, you're assuming that Richmond's going to award an affluent rural community, or relatively affluent.
Richmond's a different environment right now.
That's right.
Do they reward Southwestern and Central Virginia at all? I don't know what's gonna happen in the future. I don't mean to scare people, but I don't know. I can only get the numbers and project the best I can.
Yeah.
But based upon this, yes, I expect that to be between 3.5 to 4 million when we get there, maybe even higher. And we'll have to balance that somehow with that, I won't ramble on it.
Any other questions on the LCI and the shortfall in the reserve funds? Nobody? Alright.
2 more documents, or 3 more documents. There's the insurance rates. I've already spoken to a lot of this. This is what we would publicize once the budget's approved. Once again, when the board approves the budget, they're approving the staffing standards, the insurance rates, the CIP plan, everything that goes behind the scenes to build the budget is part of that. So these would be the rates, and I've already spoken to these. The next document is our staffing standards. And just a couple changes on there in red, and I'll speak to those. You spoke to those? I think we've already addressed these when we had the last meeting, but they're in there again. These metrics are put into our staffing model, and it calculates how many teachers, aides, principals, and everything you get per school. So this is kind of the guts of the budget. This drives how much staff people and what we do out there. It doesn't save or cost anything. It's an allocation model. That's all it is. And so the changes that are in red were addressed at our last meeting when we presented. The final page, this is, the facilities committee has reviewed this and looked at this. A couple tweaks on this that we made, but this is our 5-year plan. There's a lot more behind this where we track things over the next 20, 25 years and when they should be looked at and come on. But this is our next 5 years best look. This changes every year because something breaks and we have to address it. And the facility committee works with us on that. But I would focus on the 25, 26, 26, 27. Those are the projects we're gearing up to do. The ones in green are the ones we're planning this summer. The other ones we'd complete through the next year. And then we would revise this plan as the year goes on with the committee and move things up or backwards as needed. As you look down towards the bottom, you can see when we get to 28, 29, the year of reversion, I put a what if in here. I said, what if we just put $500,000 in there that first year reversion? And the next year we went to $1 million. The next year, 1.5 million. So I just did that what if. You can see we go into the negative pretty quickly, but over time, hopefully we could build up. I believe my best estimate with all the equipment that we're replacing, we need that fund in today's dollars at 5 million. That takes care of HVACs, roofs, parking lots, painting, that type of stuff. It does not take care of a renovation to a school or any add-on to a school. That's just maintaining. So we may want to change that 500 when we get there to a little bit more. That'll be a decision in 28, 29. But just kind of did a what if projection out, and I'll ask the committee if they want to make any comments on this. But this would be our plan, but we wouldn't bid or do anything until we get into that year in the future. Anything from the committee on?
I mean, I would just say, I know me and Matt's both with this, anything that's on here, you know, we go through, we don't just approve everything that comes on here. It's, you know, like the Otter River and Stortsville wastewater treatment plant. You know, the DEQ is fining us right now for not being in compliance on those. We gotta get in compliance. You know, some of these boilers, some of the other things, we're not just doing cosmetic things. We're not doing it because, man, we really want a new pretty architecture somewhere. It's just keeping these things running. And so, you know, that $5 million, I'm not challenging Randy's numbers, but I think that's a low estimate. I think that, you know.
I would say that's minimum.
Yep, yeah, and minimum is a stretch, you know, if we're looking at, you know, in.
4 years out from now.
Yeah,
Well,
and Matt and I know, you know, from construction, how much of price has changed over the last 4 years. I mean,
Yeah.
through a house you could have built 4 years ago, you couldn't get a garage for that now. And so it's things that I think are gonna be a real serious concern. I think we're probably closer to 6 or 7 million wanting to be in there. And that, again, we don't have the money for it. We just don't. And so,
And to run on those things, just to piggyback on that, my maintenance committee, my maintenance staff along with me with the committee, we meet together and sometimes even with it's like, okay, well, there's a roof slotted for next year and we're going, there's no leaks. It's like, we can wait another year or two. We're pushing off, getting the maximum life out of everything we can. We work with the committee and they push back and we could go and do some more digging and do things on that. I said it was like in today's dollars, but a lot of those things were based upon what we got them for. During COVID, I think everybody was doing HVAC, so I think there was the prices were much higher and they've come back down. but there's still inflation, so it's hard to pinpoint what those would cost 20 years out. So that'll have to constantly be readjusted based upon current pricing. Once you do the JF HVAC, you got a better idea of what's happening, and you can adjust from that. So each year you do something, you go, oh, that's what that roof costs per square foot. Now you refactor as you go out each and every year. So yes,
And none of our buildings are getting any younger. I mean, you've got Boonesboro Elementary in New London with 70-ish year old gymnasiums. You've got, so those maintenance costs in those older schools are gonna continue to rise as well.
when you get 50, 60, 70 years on a building, you're talking about getting to more major renovations. The plumbing gets shot, some of the electrical and stuff like that, and that's where it really skyrockets. And once you go in there, then you gotta meet current ADA. We do the best we can to do that, but when you renovate, you have to do more. And everything just costs more, so.
Anything else on that? Any other questions?
And that's.
I have a question
concludes
real
where I am
quick
right now,
about-
if there's any other questions.
I do have a question on the staffing standards.
Yes.
You know, last year, we were running into something where we had a shortfall. We decided to use all-in money to keep our staffing standards the same.
Well,
I missed the
actually,
meeting, so I apologize.
Actually, we did change the staffing standards. So what happened last year is I implemented the new staffing standards, reduced our local, I took those positions out of our local and moved them over to all in. All in money is gonna be done, those positions go away.
Okay.
So I'm applying the staffing standards that were approved last
Set
year,
last year.
which weren't as favorable as the year before. That's what's being applied here. The all-in positions are all gone.
And with that, you are,
That's what I have, staff, and I'm free to answer any questions you may have. Couple things that was just provided, the big increase in insurance, a little bit difficulty, but we need to shore that up. I don't think over the 10-year time frame it's abnormal for the increases, but it's a lot of it happening at one time, which prevents us from doing other things we may want to do this year. So, with that, I conclude and happy to answer any questions.
Ms. Dobson, any questions?
No questions. Just that it paints a pretty grim picture on the balance in the budget.
Mr. Hill?
Yeah, I think I've been vocal during this meeting, I don't know if you guys realized. But I think I wanna also kind of reiterate this is a grim picture. And whatever we get from state or locality, whatever the case is, we don't control that number. The only number we can control is once we get a dollar amount, we gotta be able to, we've gotta cut to get there. We can't run on a deficit. I wish we could, it'd be a lot easier, just print money, that would give us the power. So, there's gonna be in the next 3 years, and really this year, we're gonna have to start making hard decisions pretty quickly. Cause if not, we're gonna run into, I don't wanna kick it to where we're sitting here in 28 and we're going, all right, we are completely out of money. We got an HVAC system that's failed at JF. What are we gonna do?
Mhm.
That's a bad place to be at.
Yeah, I mean, even if we, on the first page, if we were to cut a lot of these things, it's still a drop in the bucket. It's really not gonna help us for long at all. It's kind of just delaying the inevitable. We just need more money. I hate to say that. But it's a fact. Things are just crazy. For everybody. If you can't see that, and I look, the LCI, it's went up, of course, like Dr. Hubach said, but it's still way behind the curve. And the state as well, which, we don't have very much control of that here at the local level. So I do have a question for you, Randy. So for 1%, increase, right, in the LCI, we're losing 730,000 from the state. So what would a 1% increase in dollar amount be?
1% increase in what?
The LCI.
That's what I was saying, any, best as I can calculate. if the LCI changes by 1% up or down, then our revenue from the state would go up or down by that 730. That will change over the next 2 or 3
Yeah, I'm
years.
just wondering what the, so you can't really, you could tell me what the 1% is in dollar amount for us,
The change in our funding would be 730, but the LCI, the 1%, how they are you saying how do they calculate that 1%?
how would we?
They look at 3 factors. They look at income taxes, sales tax, and property values.
Okay.
So they put that into this calculation and it spits out the LCI. The biggest, I think, factor that hurts Bedford County being a rural county and as big as we are, the county, I'm not arguing their policy here, if you have land in agricultural use, you don't pay as much on your property taxes. The state doesn't count that. They count the true value of the assessed value rather than a decreased one in which the county is collecting. So they're saying the LCI is that high. I know our board of supervisors in some people in county is saying, but that's agricultural use. You shouldn't be doing that. Well, that's how Richmond calculates. That's their rules right now. And they haven't changed those. So yes, I can't tell you,
Exactly.
if income tax goes up, sales
Right.
tax goes down, property tax,
Right,
they all feed in and then they divide and it spits out this formula.
I got you.
Yeah, so hard to tell what would force that to change.
Forgive me, so theoretically, if the LCI goes up, the state says, okay, you can afford a locality to pay more.
Yes.
Okay, so that $730,000, it didn't go away. They're just saying, all right, you need to pony it up from your local fund. Is that?
That's how their metric works.
Okay.
Now, whether the locality does it or not is up for the locality to decide how they want to fund schools, but the state's gonna cut you. And that's what I'm saying, over the last 10 years, 12 years,
It's gone up dramatically.
it's gone up like over $4 million. But reversion, we've been getting a better rate because of the reversion
You've been
being in
getting
place.
that
So
31
have you really
instead of-
felt it? Not in its entirety, but it's coming.
Gotcha.
What we have felt is that because it's coming, we've been putting money aside and not putting it into our operating fund to do the raises and do other things that we'd like to do. So we've been cutting and doing other things to prepare for that. And that's just been a burden. That's, it's been tough keeping up with that on top of inflation, both hitting at the same time.
But and just so that everybody understands, the flip side of that is that even though the LCI is going up, the tax rate hasn't gone up. So there's no more money coming in from the locality, even though the state assumes that it could.
The state says it should, whether the locality does it or not is what the community wants to bear and what they want to do. So it's a community decision, yeah. You have different communities that have different things. As I said, if you redo the formulas in Northern Virginia right now, some of them, the max that the LCI can go up to is 80%. So if you go to Fairfax,
They're max.
they're getting 20% from the state, 80% coming locally. I don't know if you're living in Fairfax, you're going, what gives with that? So that's what I'm saying. When they redo this formula, I don't know what's gonna happen. So, the state understands that some wealthy areas can pay and then they gotta shift into other areas that can't do it and stuff. So it's a complicated thing. But ours has been creeping up and now we're,
And Randy, ours is creeping up because of the growth in forest.
it's.
And even though we have not, correct me if I'm wrong, and even though we haven't raised our taxes, we are getting more money from those houses and things that are,
Well,
the county is getting that money.
I'm jumping into an area that's not mine, but I'll say this is the way it works. The county collects revenue through several different mechanisms, the biggest being property taxes. So if property values go up, and people refer to it equalizing, if property values go up and you drop your rate to equalize, that means you're gonna bring in the exact same amount of revenue you did last year, next year. And I think that's being like, well, that means inflation doesn't exist, and it does. So theoretically, when property values go up, you leave your property tax the same and you bring in the extra money to deal with inflation and things that you're dealing with. That hasn't been the case here. I'm not blaming anybody. I think at the last time they did something, they didn't equalize, they left 3 cents to take care of CIP issues, of which some of that is benefiting us with the Liberty High School, Stanton River High School, and Bedford Primary. So they kept 3 cents and brought in more revenue to pay the debt service on those. So that, some of that helped us. So those are the challenges with the Board of Supervisors and where do they set the rate, where is it appropriate? The state is like, you do what you wanna do, but we're cutting you. That's how they balance it. And as the county gets richer, right, they cut the schools, they don't cut the county. The mechanism of the state saving money is on the schools, and we have no revenue generating capability. We just have to advocate and do the best we can. So there's different competing things out there that can cause that and stuff, but that's how the state formula works today. We'll see what happens in the future.
Anybody else? All right, it's up to me. I just want to thank you, Mr. Hagler, Mr. Dupere, and the rest of the staff for working on this. I know it's tough. I know it's a lot of hard work, especially with what we're up against. I want to thank all of the board members who came into this office and first off gave suggestions for what we would like to do this year, but also looking into the future of what we're kind of up against as well. I think that was really important. It was good to set up our priorities and say what's important to us as a board. So I want to say thank you to everybody for that. Lots of things were discussed tonight, so kind of want to go back to what Mr. Dupere brought up of some of the things in his budget. I was at a meeting, I think it was last week, and Sheriff Miller was bringing up about the growing mental health challenges that they're facing in the community and in the county. We're seeing the same things. Sheriff's Department is dealing with it more and more. It's real and it's serious. So I am glad that we are addressing it with our younger students. The other thing that we should, when we think about that, is that it's really hard for a teacher to run a classroom. It's probably a lot harder when they're having disruptions all the time. It's definitely hard on the other students that are there. So it's definitely not fair for that. So I'm glad that we are trying to address it. I know we address it in middle school and high school, but I'm glad that we are addressing that. I'm also glad that we're addressing making sure that we have SROs in our buildings. So I think everybody in the community is all for that, and I don't think you're going to get any pushback from any of us here. At the same time, though, as you guys all have heard tonight, that we are facing serious financial pressures, and we need to be honest about it. Now we have a $3 million reversion gap. That's could be $4, $4.5, $5 million. That presents a real challenge for long-term stability. We thought we were trying to come in for a soft landing. It looks like it's bumpy, and it's getting bumpier. Inflation continues to increase operating costs, which you've heard about tonight throughout this division. CIP costs, fuel, materials, food, and then a 30% increase in health insurance. And third, we're falling behind with salary competitiveness compared to other school divisions, not just across Virginia, but definitely in our region. It certainly makes that harder. It makes it harder on us to recruit and retain high-quality teachers and staff that our students deserve. On top of that, of course, as I just talked about, our student needs are increasing, especially in mental support. When it comes to funding, we need to look at these facts. Several years ago, we decided to start putting $600,000 into our maintenance reserve. And before that, that was like 3 years ago. I don't think we put anything in, so we started doing that. But our request to the county, I think 3 years ago, our request was $0 additional dollars. 2 years ago was $0 additional dollars. And then last year, I think we requested $4.5 million. We did get some. There was definitely the money from the debt service that we were getting for the schools, but we requested 4.5. This year our request is 1.8. That's 60% less than last year. I believe that request, this initial request, is reasonable. It shows that we're trying to be fiscally responsible while addressing the immediate needs of our students and our teachers. And I know, as has been said tonight, and we all hear about, the county certainly has challenges as well. They have a ton of priorities that they need to fund, and they also have limited resources. They have tough decisions to make just as we do. The truth is this: the people of Bedford County here deserve the truth, and they're more than capable of understanding the reality that we face. Everyone here tonight laid out a very sobering picture. That $3 million to $5 million shortfall is going to come really quickly. Before we talk about the tough decisions that I actually see in front of us, I want to share an example. Most of us have all had a toothache at some point. First you start out small, you take a sip, like that didn't feel right. You know, you go to sleep, you have a rough night sleeping, and maybe I just bit down the wrong way. It's not that bad, I'm gonna deal with it later. You ignore it, you think the tooth is gonna fix itself, but it doesn't. Weeks go by, months go by, eventually that turns into a root canal or a crown, or worse, a painful extraction. What could have been fixed with a small filling became a major problem. More pain, more time, and a lot more money. I think that lesson there is pretty simple. Doing nothing doesn't resolve the problem, it makes it worse. Leadership is not avoiding hard decisions, it's making them before the problem becomes bigger and more expensive. A couple years ago, on this board, we had an opportunity to make a tough decision, very difficult decision. Wasn't optimal, and nobody liked the options. But instead of acting, we didn't do anything, and doing nothing had a cost. That cost us $2 million in repairs, and it cost us $900,000 a year for the last 2 years to keep a building open. It's nearly $4 million that could have gone towards programs for our students and raises for our teachers and staff. But we didn't act, and now we must. Our teachers and staff deserve more. We're pushing for a 3% increase in step raises. Is it enough? Absolutely not. But the reality is we cannot give them more because our denominator is too large and compared to our numerator. Our expenses are outpacing our revenue. We cannot cut our way to success, but we have a responsibility to be good stewards of the resources that we have. Small schools are expensive to operate. So the way that I see it is we have a binary choice, and neither option is perfect. This has to do with our budget shortfall and what we see in the future. Option 1, we can eliminate classroom positions across the county, and we can increase our classroom sizes to the SOQ limit. Option 2 is we look carefully at our buildings and consider closing one. One option that must be thoughtfully considered is the potential closure of Stewartsville Elementary School. I know this is not a decision that should be taken lightly. Stewartsville has a long history and a deep connection to the community. But reviewing this option allows us to determine whether resources could be better aligned to support student learning, maintain competitive compensation for teachers and staff, and expand essential services like mental health support. Under this option, Stewartsville Elementary would be decommissioned and K-4 students would go to Goodview Elementary. Within the Stanton River attendance zone, all 5th grade students from Stewartsville, Goodview, Huddleston, and Manita would attend Stanton River Middle School, and the 8th grade students would transition to Stanton River High School. We brought this exact thing 2 years ago. This option is projected to reduce annual expenses from $900,000 of today's money to probably close to $1 million a year in perpetuity, while also avoiding millions in long-term capital improvement and maintenance costs. Again, this is still not an easy decision, but leadership requires us to act when the facts are clear. Doing nothing is not neutral. Doing nothing simply makes the problem bigger. So with that, I would like to ask this board for consensus on next week's school board meeting agenda. So we have a public comment period on this prior to our regular public comment during the meeting, followed by a vote on what was option 2 regarding Stewartsville Elementary School at the March 12th board meeting. Our responsibility is to use taxpayer dollars wisely while providing the best possible education and support to every student in Bedford County. So with that, I respectfully ask for consensus so that we can begin addressing this challenge responsibly. So with that, I will ask consensus for that.
Can I ask a question before you do that?
Yes?
Okay. Sorry, I always have questions. That's who I am. Our vote tonight is not necessarily to follow that plan. Our vote tonight is, do we want to introduce that plan to make a vote on next week? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanna make sure I'm
And to
clear
have
on what that is.
a commentary period before that.
Mr. Chairman, if I could also say too, like we discussed earlier, we could put, cause not all board members were here 2 years ago, so we could do a recap info item also on the agenda next week so that the presentation can be shown again, everything can be shown again, gone over again.
Yes. Okay. Are we good? Looking for consensus, so that's a yes or a no.
Yes.
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 No.
Yes.
This is from majority.
Okay. All right, if there's nothing else, we will move on to adjournment. So with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.